ልቻለው ደሞ በጉልበቴ አቤት ያልኩኝ ሁሌ ለእመቤቴ ኧረ ባላቅሽ ከምጨነቅ አንቺን ወድጄ ኖሬ ምድር ላይ ገና ለኔ ምኑን አውቄ ፍቅር ልቻለው ደሞ በጉልበቴ አቤት ያልኩኝ ሁሌ ለእመቤቴ ለቡዳ ሳምሯት ምትቋዳ ይገኝ ጥሎኛል ከጇ ላይ እንዳሻት አድርገኝ በምን ይኮነናል ብጠየቅስ ነፍሷን የሸጠኝ ፍቅር ነው የገዛችኝ እሷ ለቡዳ ሳምሯት ምትቋዳ ይገኝ ጥሎኛል ከጇ ላይ እንዳሻት አድርገኝ በምን ይኮነናል ብጠየቅስ ነፍሷን የሸጠኝ ፍቅር ነው የገዛችኝ እሷ እንደ ልባበት በወንድነቴ አቤት ያልኩኝ ለእመቤቴ የፍቅር ንጉሥ የፍቅር ጌታ እኔ ሎሌ ነኝ እሷ ብላታ ገረታኝ ፍቅርሽ ምን አደርጋለሁ አላለለኝም እችለዋለሁ አላለለኝ እችለዋለሁ አላለለኝ እችለዋለሁ
Hi, I'm your host, Momin Barry, on Media Watch and Hunger and Poverty. Thanks for tuning in. As you know, we've been covering many issues on hunger and poverty on this program, and we have to cover many more issues in the years and days and weeks to come. Please tune in, and we thank you for joining.
If there be time to expose through discussion the falsehoods and the fallacies, the remedy to be applied is more speech, not enforced silence.
Public, educational, and governmental access television is such a remedy, providing every community with a forum for free expression. PEG Access empowers every voice to be heard. It's the freedom to communicate, and it's only on cable.
By 2005, every child in the world could be safe from polio. It is the promise of a vaccination program led by the United Nations. Last year, polio was reduced 80%. Even in war, 35 million children were vaccinated in Afghanistan and Pakistan. U.S. support for the UN helped make it possible. That's why America must keep its promise to pay its overdue UN bills. Congress must approve the final payment now. Great nations keep their word.
Hello, I'm Momin Barry, your host, and you're watching Media Watch on Hunger and Poverty. As always, we bring you shows that are of quality, informational, and timely. And this one is no exception. With us in the studio is Jennifer Parmley. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Momin.
Good to have you. We wanted to talk about what's happening in the Horn of Africa. We've heard in the news and in the media, print otherwise, that there's a drought, famine, whatever you want to call it. There's a humanitarian crisis in the Horn of Africa. Let's focus on Somalia now and its surroundings in the border areas. And before we get to that, though, let's hear from you a little bit about you. Who is Jennifer Parmley? Your background, as well as the organization you're associated with.
I'm Jennifer Parmley, and I work for the United Nations World Food Program. This is a job I came to a little more than a year ago after 25 years in journalism. And many of those years I spent as a foreign correspondent, and the bulk of those in Africa, in fact, in the Horn of Africa, where we're discussing today. So I come to it with a lot, I've seen a lot of unfortunately, a lot of droughts and famine conditions in the Horn, and of course it's come back to roost again this year, sadly.
Correct, yeah. I mean, we can, it's another show to talk about what happened back in the mid-90s. And we know that you were also had a hand in that and experience in that. But let's talk about Somalia. What is WFP doing in Somalia at this point? Is there any program, any project that's going on to help the affected Somalis? And we hear
from the USAID report that 2.1 million Somalis are affected. So let's talk about what is WFP doing in Somalia.
Right. I know the latest projection, which they just issued this week, on 2.1 million. It's predicated on the expectation, unfortunately, that if the current rains do not materialize in a good way, a positive way, and if humanitarian aid doesn't come in adequate amounts, then indeed there will be 2.1 million people in need. Currently, WFP is feeding a little over 1 million people in Somalia, and the ICRC, that's the International Red Cross, and CARE are feeding another 500,000 people. We work in partnership with them. There are a number of therapeutic feeding centers, which are emergency feeding centers, usually for kids, because of course they're the most vulnerable in these famine situations. I'd like to clarify the use of the word famine, since we talked about that before. I mean, a famine is almost a political term these days, and it's too soon to declare it a famine, and like the one that hit Ethiopia famously in 1984-85. However, it's a very large humanitarian crisis. All the characteristics are there, what we call pre-famine conditions. And again, if the emergency response is not adequate, if the rains, the long rains, the GU rains, they call them in Somalia, if these fail again, this would be a third straight year, then we're looking at a very likely scenario in which famine would be declared in southern Somalia. That's the very worst hit part of the country.
So inside Somalia is really where the focus is right now.
Well, again, from the WFP perspective, the World Food Program, it's a part of the Horn of Africa where 3 countries come together. Ethiopia, Somalia, and Kenya come up, and traditionally it's a very, these are people that live on the margins in the best of times. So right now they've been pushed over the edge into a very severe emergency. Basically in areas like Ghetto, which again is part of southern Somalia, that's perhaps the epicenter of the crisis in Somalia right now. We have a primarily pastoral population. In fact, most of Somalia, as you know, is pastoral in nature. And they've lost up to 80% of their cattle. Of course, camels are hardier, so they've lost fewer percentages of those, but cattle is, I mean, the livestock and goats and sheep also. And this has severe economic implications for the country of Somalia as a whole, because livestock is its backbone, its economic backbone. I think something like 2/3 of their exports are livestock. So if you have this tremendous depletion of the cattle population, it's not just on an individual basis, you're wiping out herders, their entire livelihoods, but for the country as a whole, it's quite devastating.
Yeah, it is. It is, and certainly when you combine all of that with, people migrating from one area to the other, it makes your job difficult, and any NGO's job difficult to be able to contain it.
That's right.
To be able to deliver what you want to deliver.
And the other problem is that the rains. I mean, there isn't a whole lot of agriculture in Somalia, especially in the wake of the whole civil war and everything. But what there is, that also they had a 3rd straight year of poor harvest, cereal harvest. And what that means is, in a situation like this, the prices shoot right up. So for people who have lost just about everything, they can't even afford to buy cereals at these prices. So you have people who have lost everything, can't afford to buy it, so they're utterly dependent on the mercy of outsiders coming in with emergency food aid. So it really is a serious crisis.
Yeah, so just to clarify, you do have staff on the ground?
We do. It's mostly local staff. Again, we're working in close partnership with, in some cases, the regional or local, I should say, governments on the ground to help with security, and that's of course a huge issue as ever in Somalia. And we do, but we have to really move people in and out fairly fast because because of the security environment. As you may know, during the last year, in 2005, we had a number of hijackings of ships. I mean, this was just, it was unprecedented. It changed the whole way we had to deliver food, and unfortunately, this increases the price of delivery of food. So now we have to bring everything in via truck. We had our first overland convoy, I believe, in almost a decade in December of 2005, precisely because it's not safe enough to bring it in by ship. Nobody wants to
Right,
take that
take the
risk.
chance, yeah.